Yeah, it's a nice Pokemon Go logoed shirt that you have on. I noticed you're wearing all gray. It's very...
I call it Earl Grey. It fits me to a T. So are we ready to start the panel?
I guess we are ready. We've got some people. So
All right, no pressure. No pressure.
it's okay. I'll let you do all the talking.
Oh, great. Well, greetings, everyone. We are going to go ahead and start the first ever panel at the Minecraft 60-minute maps convention. Thanks to Israeli Idan for inviting us.
Yeah, that about sums up the start. Yeah. Yeah.
So as you all know, you're here to learn how to become a Pokemon master.
No, actually, you're all here to learn about how to make the best 6-minute map, or just take the ideas from that and put them into normal map making.
Okay, so before we start, if everyone out there in the audience can just crouch to let us know you can hear us. All right, very cool. Stay crouched. Now, if you've ever made a map, uncrouch, any kind of map at all. Oh, wow, cool. And if you've ever made a 60-minute map, I want you to jump. Nice. Very cool. Hawk, you're not jumping.
Oh.
So
you're not jumping either, though.
Oh. There we go. Okay. So most of you guys have made maps in the past. If you have not, that's cool. You are welcome to come and listen, and perhaps Hawkminer will inspire you to make a map or a 60-minute map. But before we start, I don't know if everyone knows who we are. I haven't done 60-minute maps in a bit. But Hawk, you have recently been probably the most active. So do you want to just give us a who is Hawkminer for like a minute?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Hawkminer. I run the 60-minute map tournament now, as you can call it tournament. It's kind of the official thing. People submit their maps based on themes, based on weekly challenges, and then I go through them, play every single one, post every single one, try and help people make better 60-minute maps, and then eventually declare a winner for that tournament, move on to the next season. And I took that over from Ron, rsmalec, and he's going to tell you about himself now.
Well, and you've made some maps yourself, yes. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Like a few?
Like 112, is that what I have in my folder? 117.
So if anyone can speak about mastering 60-minute maps, I think you're among that crowd.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Cool.
Just know what I'm talking about a little bit.
Okay, so I have been making maps since late 2010, early 2011. I started publishing some way back before there were such things as command blocks, before there was even such things as the end, which is pretty weird to think about. And sometime, what year was it when CDF and Rec? Oh, I guess it was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years ago, February, CDF Demand and Rockabilly had the idea to challenge each other to make a map in only 60 minutes. And I thought it was a cool idea and that I would take that idea and challenge the whole community. So I started a couple 60-minute map tournaments. And I myself have made, I think, 5 or possibly 6 60-minute maps. Some solo, some with friends like CDF and Kavolta and others. So we wanted to talk today about what makes a good map, because both of us have not only made them but had to judge maps. And each tournament is a little bit different. But Hawk, like, what are the first things that you look for in a map?
So one of the major things that I always look for is flow. The idea that the map can be followed from start to end without the player getting lost anywhere in between. And I think that's something that people kind of like look over. They don't really think about it. But when you're rushed to make something in 60 minutes, the idea that you connect everything you build in a smooth way kind of gets lost. So that's one of the main things that I always try and judge maps based on is if it has good flow, it's definitely a better map than a map that had bad flow.
Okay.
Thanks.
And what about visuals? So do you put a lot of emphasis on the visuals of the map? I mean, it could take hours to build something that looks good.
Yeah, so like things like aesthetic build and stuff and mechanics as well, like visual mechanics. Um, those get some weight, especially because really impressive ones, like you said, can take hours, and the fact that you can make something that good in under 60 minutes and still have a working map. But the idea is you'd still have to have a working map, and sometimes people get a little too focused on making it look pretty. So often, um, even though I put weight towards that in certain things, like a story type map, where it really like immerses you in the story. In something like a mini game, I'm okay with it looking very basic as long as everything else in the map actually works, and I don't have to like deal with it for 5 hours.
Cool. So one of the things that I like to see is a unique map or a unique theme. That's one of the reasons that most of my tournaments start with a random set of words, and I'm always curious what people will come up with because I could give this audience here a random word, and I could probably get 13, 14 different maps that are just completely different based on what jumps to your mind when you hear that word.
hmm Yeah, I always try and if I'm not using a completely random set, like I'm filling up a dispenser with words that I've come up with, I try and use open-ended words, things that could be interpreted in like at least 5 or 6 different ways, and then from there, even with only 5 or 6 different interpretations of that word, people will interpret it even further as to what they do with it. So,
So you're given a word and you know that there is a countdown clock that's about to start. How do you begin a 60-minute map? Where do you even start? Do you just start writing commands?
so I think that I mean these days a lot of people use flat worlds. Back when I started making 60-minute maps, I would use like actual terrain, just because it's easier to take something that's already created and then add to it. But I think the first thing you need to do is think, what do I want this word to mean? What do I want this theme to mean? You have to have some kind of idea of how the map is going to end, otherwise you're never going to be able to start it.
Oh, start at the end and then work towards the beginning?
Basically, plan it out, because if your player doesn't have an endpoint to reach, there's no reason for the player to start the map, at least in my opinion.
But if I only have 60 minutes, how much time should I spend planning?
See, that's where scope creep kind of happens, right? You gotta start with a very basic idea, and then if you have extra time, you can add on. But if you start planning and then you're like, but I also want to add this and this and this and this, so don't spend too much time planning. Just think of a very basic idea, something you know you can complete quickly, and then build outward from there once you've got that done.
Okay. So my preference is actually the 60-minute map where you don't have time to plan and you have to do it all on improv. A lot of our tournaments that we've run, though, have been over like a week's time. And so we've basically given you guys words and you've had a week to kind of plan it, but the timer starts when you're supposed to build. And you're supposed to not build before the timer. It's a little bit of an honor system.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
to me, one of the things that I like to do, so I really don't like to build in a flat world. I would rather let the game generate a random seed, and then take a really quick fly around and kind of let the shape of the land also inspire the flow that you were talking about, or the backdrop of the map. And hey, that's a lot less blocks that I have to place, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you prefer serious maps or funny maps, or doesn't matter?
So that's the thing, right? Is if you do a serious map, you have to do it right. If you do a funny map, you have to do it right. Um, so really, it comes down to what the person thinks they can build. because if everybody tries to make a serious map, some people just can't handle building a serious topic. And if you can't focus on what you're trying to build, it just falls apart. Or if you're trying to make a funny map, and no offense, some people aren't funny. Um, it kind of breaks apart as the map goes on, and then the player doesn't enjoy the experience, and so it doesn't really matter to me what you're going for as long as it's something that you're comfortable building.
Okay, but to me, if you do attempt to make a funny map, even if I don't think it's funny, if you have the flow and if you
Yeah,
complete your thought, I will still appreciate it.
yeah. I would appreciate the jokes. I'm just some people like reach too far to be funny. Like they think that they could pull it off and then they can't. And I'll still give them credit. Like, oh, you finished your joke. Good job. Somebody out there probably thought it was hilarious. But if the majority of people don't find it funny, don't try and build something funny. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I would say is try not to stress yourself out about am I making a funny map, a serious map. When you first get your randomized word, your mind is going to go somewhere. And I would say 9 out of 10 times, just go with wherever your mind goes, and just start placing the first blocks that you need. And when I say placing the first blocks, I literally mean just pick a block color or a block type that's going to be kind of central to your theme, and start placing some basic blocks, and try to let your mind finish filling out the quote unquote story that you're going to tell, or the mini map mechanics, or whatever it is, while you started placing. Because in my mind, you don't really have time to like stand around and think. You have to be moving while you think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you definitely don't have time to just sit there at the beginning. I have like a palette of blocks that I just start with. I start with like stone bricks, spruce wood, stuff like that. And I just start building something that is similar to what my theme word is. And then I go back and make changes as necessary um, as I actually develop the idea. But I start placing blocks immediately. Like,
And the other thing too is a lot of experienced map makers will have commands that they use in every map that they make. I would definitely encourage you guys to have those commands in a notepad or somewhere that you can easily copy and paste into your 60-minute maps, because again, you don't have necessarily time to type out all the commands unless you're like extremely good at just coding. It In my mind, it's fair to have kind of a cheat sheet that you can copy and paste in basic, simple commands.
yeah, I also encourage that. I actually have a notepad on my desktop at all times that has about 100 and something commands that I use on a regular basis. Even if I don't use them all in every map, there are things like summoning in skulls and stuff that I just don't want to have to type out over and over again. So I just copy paste a new command block.
And try, I always encourage experimentation. So in a 60-minute map, try to exceed your limits, but try to be also realistic. If you know that your map is going to need, let's say, 50 command blocks, and you only have 60 minutes, then your build is going to be smaller. If you are going to have, say, 1 or 2 command blocks, then you have more time to do your build. So just have a general idea in the back of your mind of how you're going to balance those two things, because I really think those are the two sort of biggest time sinks, is just literally building and literally testing and typing in your command blocks.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're going to have a lot of mechanics, you test them. You have to test within the 60 minutes for it to be a 60-minute map. So if you know that you're going to have a lot of mechanics, you need to build in that test time or test it as you go, because it would be really bad to find out at the end of your time that your first command block doesn't work and everything else relies on that.
Yeah.
And then your map as a whole is just scrapped.
And that may also mean that you don't have a lot of time to put dialogue or narrative or story into your map. So I don't see Boona Boy in the audience, but he's one that comes to mind as writing very long in-game books.
Yeah.
So,
such as his book and his exhibitor booth. 23 pages.
so you really have to think about, okay, how can I get my story across? If it's a story map, or even if it's a mini game, how do I get my rules across in the shortest amount of text possible? Because literally every character counts towards your time limit.
Yep. Yeah. The I always encourage at least having a little story in any map, just giving the reason for a player to be there. In 60 minutes, you don't always have time to include that little bit, but I still encourage it. But some people get a little carried away. If it's not a story-focused map, don't spend 30 minutes writing dialogue for it. Nobody wants to read 30 minutes of dialogue before they enter a mini game, and also you just spend 30 minutes on something that isn't crucial to the map.
Yeah, especially not someone judging your map.
Yeah.
So that's another point too, is if you are entering a 60-minute tournament, I think it's absolutely critical to listen to or read what you're being judged on, because sometimes the different criteria will have different weights to it, and that actually could be the difference between what is normally a great map but doesn't quite fit the rules of the tournament, being a winning map or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I weight things based on whatever the criteria of the week was. So if it was an adventure type map, which I just had recently, story was weighted for about 60% of the points. So if you had a really great build, but like 2 lines of dialogue throughout the entire map, there wasn't much story there, and you just lost a majority of your points, even if it looked really, really pretty.
And
So.
now, as far as story goes, so again, you're given a word and you have fragile seconds to come up with a story. What do you try to draw on if you're drawing a blank? Where do you look for inspiration?
So, for inspiration, I basically use children's stories because those can be twisted in any form, basically, as we've seen throughout the years. But the other thing is, your story doesn't have to make sense at first, because you can go back and fix little bits of it. So if I get something like training or something like tortoise, I'll just start writing a story about a tortoise that wanted a potato, and then I'll go back and try and make it make sense. But as long as there's some kind of line to follow, and then you can add to it.
So I'm curious. You said tortoise, but then your mind jumped to potato.
Yeah, well, okay, so the tortoise is an animal. Animals have to eat, so the tortoise is trying to get a potato, and then you go back and fill that in. So
Okay.
I
So what
basically reach to something that could be related, and then convince myself it is related.
and what you're saying is, if you don't immediately get an idea, I mean, think back to something in the room with you or in your real life that recently happened, and just use that as the story, and
Yeah.
then, of course, stick in a potato.
And remember that the theme word doesn't have to be the majority focus of the map. It has to be in the map. So your map doesn't have to be a giant tortoise. It just has to have a tortoise involved in the story. So,
Okay, so I think we probably can start having people queue for questions, but before we get your audience questions, I'm curious, Hawk, what are a couple things that have stood out in maps that you've judged over the past 2 years?
okay, so I don't actually know. I think he's in the audience. Um, Momlob, yep, he's there, has made some of the largest and most beautiful builds I think I've ever seen. So I want to, in particular, point him out. But there's also the fact that people like Buna and such have made maps that have excellent stories. Bolonzik always makes me laugh. His people just amazingly put together things that could be full-size maps in 60 minutes. And it's just like, I started with a flat world and a cat that despawned. And people come into these things with like mini-sized adventure maps that actually get played by YouTubers. It's insane.
Yeah, I've actually seen a pretty good number of maps that were 60-minute maps and then maybe got polished off and published on minecraftmaps.com, which is just really cool to see that.
Yeah.
So I'll ask our moderator if there are any questions yet.
Whenever you want people to line up, then do you want to have people start lining up?
Yeah, we can have some questions start.
Okay, so line up, guys, if you want to ask a question. Jiggerbob is the first to ask a question. You guys, to ask a question, you will get a role named question, which enables you to type in the Discord chat. Jiggerbob he is first, and Jiggerbob and Jig. I can get to him.
So while he's typing, if you guys don't know, Jiggerbob is also
Jig, message me a question.
Longtime map maker in the community. I don't think Jiggerbob has made any 60-minute maps yet, though.
Why can't I add?
I don't think so. He's too busy making large maps that may end up having sequels.
Ron Jiggerbob asks, what happens if you go over a few minutes over the 60 minutes? When I start my 60-minute maps, they usually end up taking.
So in my opinion, when the 60 minutes are up, the time is done, and you have to kind of say, okay, this is my map. Now, if you're submitting it for a contest or whatever, obviously it's the honor system. But I do also like a finished product. So, I usually will videotape my 60-minute maps. And so I'll say, okay, I'm done. I failed. However, it's a cool idea. So I want to finish it. And then I try to fix whatever's broken, but leave things in the state that they are, as long as it's not like the player's going to be completely confused that it's not done.
Yeah, I'm the same way where, especially because I get submitted some maps that don't work or they haven't been tested or something. So if you're going to go over, right, you're like, I can't test this, or I'm going to go over time, or I've finished and then I just went through it afterward and my button to send you to the next area doesn't work. Just fix it. Leave a note if you're going to submit it to the tournament that you went 2 minutes over. The idea that you would completely scrap a product that could have actually been playable just because you went 2 or 3 minutes over your hour time is kind of ridiculous to me. I mean, the 60-minute is just supposed to encourage you to make the best product you can with as best quick thinking as you can and make you a better map maker overall.
And I think one other master tip is to the extent that you can think of all these things at once, keep an eye on your timer, because what I like to do is say, okay, I'm going to give myself, 5 minutes to just start building and thinking, and then start on command blocks if needed, or any sort of really complicated structures or whatever it is. And then give myself, let's say, 20 more minutes to kind of get to a stopping point where I can then start testing. And while I'm testing, I may actually add in signs for dialogue or whatever it is. But you got to kind of plan it so that you give each thing you're going to build a set amount of time and then stick to it. Because it's better to have 3. So if you envision 4 things in your map, it's better to kind of build 3 of them and then have a nice ending than to try to give all 4 and not be able to accomplish any of them.
Yeah. Especially if you know someone else is going to be playing your map and they're going to be really confused.
Yeah. Thanks, Jig, for that question. Do we have others queued up?
Looks like we have something of a line, yeah.
Looks like Balonzik is next.
And you have a question from Jig. The question is, what's your favorite 60-minute map that you? That's the question, and then you have a question from Wadsworth after.
Okay, so I think my answer is very easy, and I think Hawk already mentioned it. Honestly, my favorite 60-minute map is one from Momlob, which that basically is a 2D side-scrolling shadow of a robot against the sunset. Just the visual alone, I was completely impressed with. Now, obviously, well, I don't know actually if Momlob came up with that himself or if he was inspired by something, but I thought that was amazing. And then the gameplay itself worked, and the build, when you look at it, is so absolutely minimal, but it all just works perfectly.
Yeah, I think Mom Hub's robot, because I believe he submitted one to me, unless I'm misremembering it. But he's made a couple of them, and they're just so beautiful. Like even if the gameplay was less than it was, which it was pretty fun to go through, the build itself is just so amazing to look at. It's got to be one of my favorites.
And kind of like a runner-up for me, I'm going to give a general answer here, but let's say that somebody like Eden, even you, submit a 60-minute map for the first time. It's not going to be perfect, right? It's going to be pretty plain. But the coolest thing for me is seeing what your second map has or your third map and how like they get better every time. Those like that ability to grow impresses me more than any content in a map.
Okay, the next question here from Wadsworth. Mojang has advertised which are marketed towards much younger children. Because of this, Minecraft has become a sort of joke for players that are in the university/college. What are your thoughts on this?
Eric, I'm going to start this one, actually. I attend a public high school in America, which means that the majority of people there frown upon playing children's digital Lego games. But even with that, I encourage people to play it. Just because Minecraft isn't a children's game overall. Minecraft is a game that allows the player to express themselves in a variety of ways. And the ability to express yourself is something you'll need from childhood to adulthood. It lets people show off their artistic talents, show off their story building skills. And the idea that more children are playing it is great to me because children need that outlet too. Yeah, good job, Jake. But less adults play it because they think it's a children's game. And I think getting away from that kind of idea would be great. But if we can't, I'm fine with children playing it because the next generation at least gets to experience this one.
Do you think do you think it makes a difference to map makers what audience they're building for? Like, should people be building maps geared towards kids, or should they build towards adults or all ages? Or
so I think that's where you get to the idea of why are you building your map? If you're just building it because it's something that you want to show the world, you shouldn't worry about what your audience is. If you're building it because you want to be famous, which is not something I would ever encourage people to do, but if you're building it because you want to be famous, you should gear towards a younger audience these days because YouTubers have a younger audience. If you're building it because you think that you're going to have a niche group of people that will enjoy it, because things like I'm going to bring in City of Love had kind of a strange flavor to it, but it was enjoyed by a group of people, and that kind of map, you shouldn't worry about trying to censor it for children. You build what you want to build and then put it out there. And if children don't play it, oh well. If YouTubers don't play it, I mean, that's not necessarily the most important part of building.
yeah, and I think it's kind of good to know your own style. So I learned probably 2-3 years ago that I basically make maps for older folks because, not that the maps can't be played by all ages, but there are jokes and references in there that kids just aren't going to get nowadays.
Yeah. I like
Okay.
No, sorry, Eden. I've got one last thing to say. Yeah, my style is the very convoluted, kind of like it doesn't make sense to anyone, but especially children. So if I built a map and I put it out there, I'm not expecting some 8-year-old to come play it. I'm expecting somebody who can apparently understand my nonsense world to play it. And so I've got this very niche group. So
The next question is coming from Miko the Pro. How much is it allowed to think about the map you'll do before the tournament starts? Like the idea or what command blocks you'll need for it, or what builds are you going to do?
Well, I think as soon as you know the theme, I mean, your mind will and should start thinking about it. And so if you're in one of the tournaments that we've run where you get basically a week, I mean, you have a good day or two at least to think about what you want to do. And again, the timer starts when you open up your world and start building. Now, if you're doing like the original hardcore 60-minute way, you get your randomizer ready with your words and you log into a world, and as soon as you hit that randomize button and you get your word, then you start. So in that case, you don't have any time to think about it.
yeah, when I was doing Ron's tournaments, I tried to avoid looking at the announcement for the themes while I was in school because it would often be released like while I was in a class. Just because I wanted that original experience of you get the theme, you start building. There isn't that pre-plan. But the next best thing, if you're not going to do that or you don't think that you could pull that off, is to kind of think about it, but don't plan out everything before you get into the world. Don't say, this is my start, middle, end, this is every command I'm going to have in it. Because then you might as well just, I don't know, spend all your time building a full map so you can actually release it to the world.
And you can build your toolbox in advance. So we talked about having commands in a notepad. I think you said that you have like a palette of blocks that you just typically use,
Yep.
and whatever the word is, you will find a way to fit it into that color palette. I think you can also have in your mind like, okay, whatever this map is, it's going to be outdoors, or is it going to occur inside of a room? Because you can really quickly build a room with like a fill command and then base it inside a room. So you can kind of think a little bit about your environment and the palettes that you're going to use, whether that palette is your blocks or colors or style of map before you start. And that's just probably good tool building for any profession.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're really looking for an easy way to basically start your map, just kind of going back to that earlier points of start building right away, if you don't have a palette of blocks that you really want to use, you can build an interior really fast just by building a giant cube with a fill command and then filling it in and then dividing it into different rooms, and then boom, you have an interior. It's a lot easier than building an outside area. So if you're just starting off, it's a little tip.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yes, we have 4 more. What is your favorite non-60 map and why? By Pyro Gale ZX.
Pyrogale, I recognize that name as well. Very good question. Do you have one that comes to mind?
I don't really have a favorite map. I've got a lot of maps that I've enjoyed over the years, but I don't think I have one that I particularly would pick out as favorite.
Okay, so I have 2 answers. One I feel is a little bit cheaty because I helped make it, but my favorite map is Simburbia by Jiggerbov with some help from myself. I like it because of the ability to take Minecraft and build a map that really doesn't have anything to do with Minecraft, but it has complex mechanical systems that interact with each other, like your residential, commercial, and industrial zones. I like the humor in it. I like that it has a story and quests, even though it's essentially a mini game. I just like all of the customizations. The collect them all aspect to it is a huge thing for me in any game that I play. So that is my all-time favorite map.
Okay, we have This one coming from Balonzik. How did the tournament series get passed over to Hawkminer?
So this is the coolest thing about the Minecraft community, and I'm going to answer for you.
Yeah, that's good.
So when 60-minute maps started, right, this was just CDF and Rockabilly challenging each other. And my first thought was, oh, I want to challenge them, right? And then I said, well, shoot, why don't I challenge myself and then challenge the community, right? So I made it into a tournament. And because I'm sort of... I don't like to do the same thing twice, so I tried to make each round or each of my tournaments completely different. And then when I just kind of couldn't look at any more 60 maps for a while, after like judging like 250 of them at a very rapid pace, I just kind of took a break. And the coolest thing about the Minecraft community since day one is that somebody else just decided to pick it up and start their own. So, you know, I was inspired by the community, and I think I inspired the community to keep it going. And Eden, you yourself were just inspired to create this convention. Nobody passed the baton to you. You just did it, which is cool. And then you inspired folks like Plagiatus down here in the front to help and build like a lot of the stuff that is happening here today. Like,
if you knew the behind the scenes, that you would go crazy. Sure.
Yeah. So just to add a little clarifying point there, I went to Ron on Twitter DMs and I said, hey, it's been a few months. I figure you're probably either really burned out at playing these or you're just planning something huge. If you're not playing, or if you are playing something huge, tell me now. Otherwise, I'd like to take this over. And he said, no, go ahead. And that's basically what happened. I just reached out. I said, this was something that was important to me. This is something I think is good for the community. Do you mind if I keep it alive?
yeah, and I was like, I don't know why you're asking me. You got to ask CDF and Rec. But yeah, so if you out there have any idea for a Minecraft tournament series that you want others to play along with, anything like that, just freaking do it.
Okay, we have a double question here. Sam, A, do you ever use generators made by the community for your maps, or do you do it all by hand? And B, what do you think of Minecon Earth?
So I will, the first thing that I'll do if I don't know how to do something command-wise, for example, I will go to the Minecraft Wikipedia and look it up and try it myself. However, for speed, like once I understand the concept for speed, I will definitely use generators to generate commands.
Yeah, I like to build or write my commands by hand, just because it helps keep it in my head so I can remember it. Because once you stop writing that command over and over again, it starts to fade. But if you've done it enough, I definitely recommend using generators once you actually understand what the command is doing. The one thing that I've always used generators for is potions, just because I can't be bothered to type out the whole potion, and armor stand posing because I never learned all the rotation. But, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Finish.
Oh, I was just going to say, anything that you're going to use a generator for, I would recommend knowing the command first and then using a generator to make it easier. Not using a generator the whole time and then having no idea what the command is actually doing.
Yeah, you guys may or may not have experienced this pain, but every release of Minecraft changes things for various reasons or no reason at all. But the generators now, some of these generators I found are a couple years old, and some of them don't work in the current Minecraft version. So one other thing that I would say is if you're going to build something, when I say build, like with commands or complex build or whatever, mechanical, physical creations, think about doing it in like a prototype world first before you do it in your actual world, just in case something goes haywire.
Yeah, and I saw someone in chat point out the 1.9 pane of Telras, and then later the requirement to have quotes around everything, and then when generators didn't immediately update to that, And that's why it's important to know what you're doing. To know if you know how a Teleraw is written and you understand all of the syntax behind it, it's a lot easier to go back through something generated by a generator and fix the problem than it is to have no idea what's going on. And then you're looking at this command and you're like, well, I don't know how it's supposed to look. So I don't know if this is completely wrong or if there's just a missing quotation mark or...
So the next part of the question was about Minecon Earth. The only thing I'm gonna say here about it is I'm fine with the idea of them doing a 90-minute informational stream, and I love the idea that they're supporting other conventions. I feel like they made a little bit of a marketing mistake in the way that they presented it as the new Minecon. I think they should have just said, here's something new that we're doing, and just kept the word Minecon out of it.
Yeah, Minecon Earth, to me, it's not Minecon, it's a live stream. Minecon is getting together with people that you enjoy spending time with. That is what a convention is about. Whereas Minecon Earth is a bunch of cool Minecraft things for the Minecraft community. So, I don't know.
Okay, the next question comes from Marjo. A question for Hawk and Ron. Would you rather build a 60-minute map with the group or alone?
Have you done group builds? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, the only ones that you've ever seen me do as a group were with one other person, but I have done them with larger. I would say the problem with doing larger... Okay, so larger group have a pro and a con. The pro is obviously you can build a lot more, and often the product itself comes out a lot better. But the con with working with a group on anything, not just 60-minute maps, is you have to have a person to organize it. You have to have people that know what their role in the team is. Because if everybody is just doing what they want, you're going to have this scatterbrained product at the end. But if you have a well-oiled machine of a team, you can pull off a NASCAR pit stop and just take apart a car and put it back together and have this pristine product at the end.
Yeah, I might enjoy the challenge of doing them with someone I've never met before, or I should say never built with before. I'd say the one thing that I would get just talk about up front is that both people should be able to kind of give their input, and if you're going to have like one person as sort of the overall owner or lead and the other person follows along, know that up front. Or if both people are completely open to do whatever, just kind of know what you're getting into up front would be my advice.
Have an established lead on the product.
Okay, guys. The next question is from Alex. Just keep in mind, we are running low on time, so yeah. What got you into making 60-minute maps from Lolex?
I mean, I've pretty much everything I've done in Minecraft has been like a challenge to myself to do something more unique and different. And, you know, that could be like building an entire adventure map in survival, or then trying to corral 20 people on a Minecraft server to do that in survival. So again, I just saw CDF and Rec do something challenging, and I'm like, cool, I wanna try it.
Yeah, same thing for me. I'm trying to push myself in anything I do. So when I was going through my PvP parkour phase, I was looking for time trials. I was looking for the best servers to play on. When I got into trying to be the best survival player, I was looking for hardcore challenges. And then when I wanted to actually finally put together like a decent map product, and I saw that there was this 60-minute map thing that people were going crazy about, and obviously I knew Rex content and Ron's content before that, and I saw that all these people were doing it, that I knew what they were doing, and I was like, well, if they know what they're doing, then maybe I should give it a try.
Yeah, and I've thought a lot about this over the years, but I would really love to see somebody try and take this like 60-minute concept and do 6 people building a map in 10 minutes or 2 people in 30 minutes. So make it more of a
Ron, sorry to interrupt you really quickly. If you're gonna send a question, do it now, because in 1 minute we will no longer be accepting questions for the panel. Thank you. Keep going.
cool. Yeah, I'd love to see somebody take the concept to the next level and kind of divide your time by the number of people and turn the pressure up just a little bit.
Yep. If anyone here can get 60 people together and give each person a minute, I will personally hand deliver you a cookie.
All 60
As long-
people?
Really?
No, just one person, but
Okay, the next question is from Buddha Boy. When creating a 60-minute map, how can you make it progressively more challenging as players learn in the small constant constraint and the likely small plates of maps? Yeah, of map.
Boona Boy, can you jump? I don't see you here, man. You should be here for this. How do you make it more challenging within the space of their playtime or across maps, I guess? Hawk, do you have a thought on this one?
so I only heard about half the question, so I was just hoping you'd start talking and then I would pick up on what we were talking about.
Okay, so I think the question was, how do you make the map progressively more challenging for the player?
Oh, okay. So like ramping up difficulty as it goes on. Um, in 60 minutes, you don't necessarily have a lot of time for that. But I think just as a concept as a whole, you don't want to focus on making it so challenging that the player can't continue. You want to make it so the player feels like it's more difficult. So in a parkour map, a lot of people just immediately they go from 2 block jumps to 3 block jumps to 4 block jumps, and that's their idea of making it difficult. Adding something like a custom mechanic, like having a speed section or something, that can be more challenging, or having a ladder section, rather than just making harder jumps. Adding something new into the mix, I think, is better. If you're doing an arena type map, instead of just swarming them with more mobs, add a different type of mob. Add some kind of obstacle, something like that.
Yeah.
Or
Oh.
That's all I have to say. You can go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay.
When I think about games on the mobile phone or console games that I've played, one of the ways I would not call this difficulty, but one of the things that as you progress through a level, that the amount of invested time that you have to put into your next goal gets longer. And so if you think about basic Minecraft, to find coal or iron is pretty quick. But you have to dig deeper or go farther to find diamond. Diamond is less frequent in the world. So you can do things with time and distance a bit to not necessarily ramp up the difficulty, but ramp up the player investment in the world. There was a map, maybe it was by you actually, Hawk, where it was one of those kind of like, I call it like a job simulator game where you have to like
the
manage
cows.
a cow.
Yep.
Like those type
Be
of
wary of those.
those type of games. I love those type of mechanics management games, but like again, this isn't exactly what you did, but the first chore is to get 3 of these things, and then the second chore is to get 5, and then 7, and press the button 600 times instead of twice. So you can definitely ramp up to some degree with that type of a mechanic.
Yeah, the only thing I would say when you're building one of those is be wary of player boredom. So if there isn't something keeping the player's attention to push the button 600 times, the player isn't going to push the button 600 times. The player is going to leave. But if there's some kind of event or reason for the player to stay, they'll stay.
Yeah, so avoid cheap things like just adding lava or 600 spawners and try to like, just be creative with it.
Okay, we have two more questions in the panel for people's sake. This one's kind of a long one. Please try to keep it short. Do you think Mojang should allow the Minecraft community to have more of an impact of suggestions? And can you say the name DC Elf? Because
You cut out a little bit, but I think what you said is Mojang should have more of a feedback channel.
also the question includes, can you please say the name DC for just cause?
I think you've said it twice now, so that's enough for me.
I heard
I said it now.
DC something just cuz. I'd love
DC Alford, say
DC
it.
Alford. There you
He
go.
wants you to see it. Okay. And yeah.
So, I mean, I think since the beginning of Minecraft, they've had a lot of feedback channels. They are, to be honest, fairly responsive on Twitter. Seems to be a good one. There's a lot of community that also helps out the community. But the thing is and this is something that I kind of finally admitted a couple years ago as well, is like, map makers in particular always felt like we were being ignored. And we tried to push our content, and, we did get our chance to highlight ourselves. Hey, Kavolta back there. We did get a chance to highlight ourselves at places like Minecon, etc. And then some big YouTubers helped us out and made videos that said, hey, this would be a cool thing. Or servers became popular, and then Mojang built some things that would help server mini games, right? So I think they've been responsive, but keep in mind that they're probably getting like literally 100,000 or 10,000 messages a day, and a lot of that, like we as map makers, just get lost in the noise. Like, it's inevitable. Now we have, again, things like the marketplace and other channels where they have recognized us, but they obviously can't spend all their time on map makers.
Yeah, and even if you're broadening the concept to Mojang making changes that not everyone agrees with, not everyone agrees with any decision made in the world. You're never going to have that 100% consensus that a change is good. They do what they think is best. They try and listen for feedback. They get opinions on everything they put out. And even if they choose to go against what may feel like a majority opinion, you have to hope that they have a reason for it.
I think what I do wish that they would do slightly better on, and in fact, I think Mark IRL is now doing this like phenomenally, is telling us in advance when they're going to break something that we use, and maybe giving us a little bit of backwards compatibility would be nice.
Yeah, especially, 1.13 changes. At least they're warning us ahead of time that our maps are all broken.
Next question.
Okay, the final question, and after that, this panel will be over. After this, just so you guys know, there will be a skin contest on the main stage and a 60-block build competition hosted by the one, the only, rsmalec. So I don't know how you're going to host it, but feel free to. And the final question is, how long have you two been playing Minecraft? When did you start?
Too long. I started playing with a friend, or like a friend played, and then I would play kind of on the side. I think it was 2010, and then 2011 is when this account was actually purchased. So, around 6 to 7 years at this point. If you're gonna invest all your time into a game, I guess this isn't a terrible one, but I want my life back.
Yeah, I was in sometime in late 2010. I was in front of a 70-inch TV screen, and my older son said, "Hey, check out this game that a bunch of people are playing." This was, I want to say, like 1.2 beta or something, or it just went from alpha to beta, something like that. And we didn't even have the nether yet. And he was standing, when he logged in, he was standing on a hill looking out over a forest. And as the chunks loaded in, and I just saw like the quote unquote natural beauty of that generated world, I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And then he like turns and, looks directly at a tree. And I'm like, oh, it's like 8-bit. Like that's sort of nostalgic, even though it's really simple. And like it kind of got me into playing survival for a little while. And I tried playing on a multiplayer server and I got griefed right away. And then I built something cooler and I logged in and they had reset the server, so I lost my build. So I was like, F this game. This is not fun. And then I watched, and then my younger son got into it a little bit. So I was off for like a month or two, and then I watched the Yogscast first couple Shadow of Israfels, and I said to myself, okay, this isn't a game that I want to play. This is a toolbox that I can make role-playing game campaigns, and people can play my campaign and put them on YouTube, and I can see people playing in my D&D campaign. And that is pretty much where I am today. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I finally, after all that time, had a server and I had awesome people on it. And we basically gave each other little role-playing games and quests and stuff. And that was like, okay, I've finally done what I envisioned in Minecraft. And yeah, it's been 7 years now. So it's been a long, long time.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for